Hi, welcome to another Captured Chaos Art video. This time I'm going to be making a very large Dutch pour. It's a 36 by 48 canvas and I've never worked on one that large before, so this is going to be fun and interesting. Before I begin, this is how I mix my paints. I use 1 part acrylic paint, usually Liquitex Basics, 1.5 parts white glue, and 1 part water. I don't add silicone oil to the paints themselves, so these are just straight paint. Here's the back of my canvas, and one of the challenges with a big canvas is that the weight of the paint can make the middle sag, and then the paint pools in the middle, which makes the middle sag, which makes the paint pool in the middle. And on it gets worse and worse. So I've tried to counteract that by adding some cardboard between the canvas and the frame pieces. These cross members here are on top of the cardboard, which I just cut big flat pieces of cardboard. Didn't have one that was big enough, but even if I did, I wouldn't have been able to get it in there. These were small enough to fit underneath here and then slide back. So I'm going to turn the canvas over now so that I can begin painting on the other side. These are some of the tools that I'm going to be using today in the paint. I like these fan brushes. Carry a lot of paint and they're really soft. And I've got a couple of torches for popping bubbles. To spread paint, I'm going to try using cards of different stiffness. You can see that cards sort of have a natural curve to them. I'm going to use that to my advantage and pull them along as if I was using it like a brush. I've got a really stiff one and a much thinner one. I'm hoping that'll work. And I've got a couple of my favorite palette knives. You can use those along the edges. I've got some silicone oil, which I am going to put some silicone oil in the 2 cups that I'm going to be preparing. And I've got straws that I use to blow the paint around for the Dutch pour effect. A couple of those. I'm going to be preparing, these are 12-ounce cups. I'm going to be preparing 2 cups with 9 ounces of paint in them each. One of them is going to be blue colors with a little bit of white and silver, and the other one's going to be black and white and silver and none of the blues. And then for the background, this is going to be a Dutch pour. I'm actually going to have a split background with 2 colors. I'm going to have black and I'm going to have white, kind of meet on opposite corners and work towards the middle, and then there'll be a big curve, an S-like curve in the middle. And I've already prepared all the paint because it does take a while, and I did want to let it sit for a while so bubbles might rise to the top. It takes time for that. I stirred pretty carefully. I would never use any kind of an automatic mixer or shake them because it would introduce a lot of bubbles. So I've covered the canvas with cardboard right now to protect it while I did this scene, but it's already ready to go. And I've prepared a platform that, let's see, here we go. I prepared a platform that will capture the paint. These strips here, these redwood strips, are about 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch, and they go all the way around out onto the desk. I put a couple of fence boards down and clamped them on to support an additional piece of plywood, because this is a really big canvas. But I have to be able to spill. You can't do pour painting without spilling, so I had to make sort of an impromptu trough. This is the painting that I'm going to try to make something like. You can see that it's white in the upper left corner and black in the lower right, and a lot of the painting is going to be coated with those two colors. And the ones in the middle are all blown out with a straw, but they were put there using a technique called a kiss pour, which is where you take 2 cups and pour them into the same stream together onto the canvas at the same time, and they kind of intermingle as you make your way across the canvas. And I'll make a big snake shape, and then I'll blow it out with a straw. So I have prepared 2 empty cups here, and I have my black paint and white paint put aside for right now. I have 3 different colors here. I have white and silver and black, and I have 3 different blues over here, and I think I have phthalo cyanide blue and probably cobalt blue and what Liquitex Basics calls brilliant blue. And I also have some silicone oil, which I think I'll add a little bit in there. You don't really need very much. I'll add it in between layers when I add paint. I've got these 2 cups arranged so that you can see into them. So I'm going to mix the paints and put them in the cups and set them aside. I don't think they're going to mingle much. It's okay. They can sit there that way. The order in the cup will be preserved. I'm going to start with some blues. And my strategy is that I want them to overlap. I don't want to pour all the blue in of one color and then the next. I do want to make sure that there is a variety of colors in there. And I'm going to add a little bit of white and a little bit of silver in between some of these. So there's some blue, and here's just a little bit of silver. And then a couple drops of oil. And then the next blue, darker blue. So now I've done one color, and I'm going to carefully set it aside. And now I'm going to do the other colors. And they do not involve any of the blues. They're just black and white and silver. And if I were to pour all of one color in and then all the next color in, you can see how that wouldn't add very much variation. It gets varied when they interleave with each other. Well, I have a little bit more black than the white and silver, so I'm going to start with some black. Goodly amount of black. And I'm not going to put any silicone oil in this one because I don't want to overdo it with cells, but also it'll be more interesting if naturally the cells follow certain colors and not others. So this is just going to be a little of one, a little of one, a little of one. Now I'm going to make the background, and this is going to be a 2-tone background. I've got 15 ounces of titanium white and 15 ounces of Mars black. And this is going to be the black area here, and up there is going to be the white area. And I'm going to have a sweeping curve that I'm going to make with the double kiss pour through the middle there. So, and I've got 9 ounces of paint in each cup, approximately. I have a little bit more of the blue than the black and white because I used some of the white and the silver in the blue cup. So I'll have to moderate that as I pour it so that it all ends up evenly distributed and I don't run out of one before I run out of the other. But that should be enough paint to make a diagonal stripe across the middle and then some. I just have to not pour it all out at the beginning. I have to pace myself. So I'm going to start with the harder side, which is the far side, which is over there, and because it's harder to reach that. And I've got these two cards. I'm not sure how well it's going to work, but I'm going to try this one right here. And we'll see what this is like. It's a lot of paint. Now, I don't want to just like dump this right here. I don't want a lot of it to fall off. So I'm actually going to, the first thing I'm going to do is sort of define the region that's going to be white. And now I sort of understand how to pour behind it. Run out. There's a lot of paint. I think there's enough. Okay. The thin card worked pretty well, and I was able to spread the white paint out. I think I would have made 1 or 2 more ounces to cover the canvas a little easier. I used a torch to pop some bubbles there, and then I touched around the edges and used one of the fan brushes to coat all of the edges with white paint. And now I'm going to do the black, which might be easier to see, I realize. And so, again, I want there to be a little bit more sort of where they meet. And it would probably be better not to use my precious colored paints and my detail paints to wet the canvas. That part of the canvas there is wetted and this side is dry still. So I'm going to try to cover the rest of this with the black. We'll see how far we get. If I have to, I can mix a little more black. So I'm pouring a line close to it because I think I can spread that line over to the other one. And then I'm going to use the rest of it, fill in the rest of the space. Save a little because I know I'm going to need more. Save a little bit of this. And I'm going to try the other one because, among other things, I don't want to mix paint colors. I have this one. I'm just curious which one works better anyway. I feel like this actually is pretty nice at the moment, but let's see. The thicker card was actually a little easier to use, and it made the job of spreading it out pretty easy. I seem to have more black paint, and that worked pretty well. And I also used a brush around the edges and to touch up some of the areas where it hadn't quite wet the canvas. And I also used a torch. I had to use my bigger torch. And I used the fan brush to touch up areas in the black to make it cover more evenly. I'm very sorry that the kiss pour did not get recorded. It was my fault in the recording. And there's nothing I can do about that. So I'll tell you what I did while we're looking at this photo of it. This is after it has dried for a while, by the way. What I did was I took the 2 cups and I oriented them so that the blue cup and the black, silver, white cup were pointing towards the opposite corners, toward the white corner and the black corner. And I poured them together, and they met right in the middle. And so there's a little more black, silver, white on the right side, on the black side, and a little more of the blues on the other side. But not completely, because of the chaos of how they were poured. They did interact, and they infiltrated both sides. I mean, there's grays that reach all the way across, and blues that reach all the way across. And that's part of what I'm hoping for when I do the kiss pour, is that they influence each other. The colors work with each other more, and they infiltrate each other better. But the colors don't blend. There are no blue-grays. There are simply grays next to blues. That's the level of detail that I like. I worked my way across, actually from both sides towards the middle, and it seemed like there might not even be quite enough paint for the middle. But there was, and I just let them meet in the middle. And then I went back and I blew along all the edges of the blue with a straw. And I blew pretty hard, and it spattered little bits of blue paint out into the white, which I had to pick out with a palette knife and sometimes coat with a little more white. And you can tell where the paint is very thin, I blew pretty hard. Sometimes that was because the paint was beginning to dry a little bit, and it needed a little more encouragement. Maybe it was a little bit thinner at that point. And then I came back along the inside edge, and I did the same thing. I did blow along that. But before I did the black side, since that paint seemed pretty thick, I wasn't really worried about it drying out too much. I went through and I did some of the chameleon technique, where I dipped the pointy end of a palette knife into some silicone oil, and I tapped the painting. And you can see some big, they look like craters or circular ponds in the gray in the lower left-hand region. Those are cells that I stimulated by touching the painting. The oil causes sort of a roughly circular retreat away from where you touched it. It doesn't work very well unless there are lots of layers of different colors, and then it reveals sort of like looking down into a pond in Yellowstone Park. You see different colors at different depths. I also sprayed on silicone oil using a toothbrush and my thumb, and you can see that sort of in the middle of the painting, right before it turns right, where it's kind of going vertical. It has a really highly detailed area, and that was done with lots and lots of tiny little atomized dots of oil flicked on by a toothbrush and my thumb. See, this edge didn't really get that interesting. I'm glad I didn't stick with it. At first I liked it. I liked the contrast, but what I'm doing is I'm blowing a lot less hard on the black side, you can tell. And part of that is to cause less splatter, but also part of that is to create detail contrast, which is contrast between the kind of detail and where you find the detail. And so this is one kind of detail, and this is a completely different kind of a detail. It's neat that it tempers out there. But I am going to finish blowing through it. But then in the middle is a completely different kind of detail. The swipey things, and the bendy things, and some cells and things like that. I am going to make more cells. But first I'm going to finish this up right here. So here's the painting after I've done manipulating it. You can see that there's an edge to the paint right here. It hasn't finished flowing out over it, but you can also see that the paint is beginning to dry there. So it can't flow too much further over the dry paint. So here's some zooming in on some of the details in the paint. Some of these are cells that are created. I sprayed oil with a toothbrush in this area, and I stimulated some of the bigger cells using the chameleon technique by touching the canvas with the tip of a palette knife that had been dipped in silicone oil. The big cells come from that. And all of the little filigree along the edges comes from blowing with the straw. Here you can see when I blew a little bit less hard out over the black, it made smaller details. The blue details I was blowing harder, and it spread that out further. Here's some really big cells. Those were all made by stimulation with the palette knife and the oil. Here's some different details. You see the lines. Those came originally from the kiss pour. And you can see a few little cells have formed. Some of those were natural. Some of them I caused. These are a different view of the ones that were caused by flicking on oil with a toothbrush. And here is a zoom in on some of the more aggressive Dutch pour blowing that I did. My website is capturedchaosart.com, and I have a gallery of paintings managed through open source software called PeeWeeGo at the second URL. And I also have some interesting blog articles about things like how to mix colors and how the color wheel works, and various techniques like dripping water on paint and making skins, and you might enjoy those. Thanks for watching my video.